Let's look at notes 1.2, solving 1 and 2 step equations. You should have a card that looks like it either has an iPad or a smartphone on it that says, "Don't call me after midnight." So first of all, that's just really good advice. Don't call me after midnight. But it's also a memory device to help us keep track of the steps for solving our linear equations. So each word is going to represent another step in our solving process. D is for distribute, and C is for combine like terms. So those first two steps are all about simplifying, like we did yesterday. M is for move your variables all to one side. So if we have variables on two sides of an equation, we need to use either addition or subtraction to move those variables together. We add or subtract any numbers that are by themselves. So we want all of our numbers to move away from the variables. And then we either multiply or divide the coefficient. Again, we're using the opposite operation to move numbers away from our variable. When we are talking about 1 and 2 step equations, that means we are going to be focusing mostly on those last two steps, A and M, but we still need to check all 5 just in case. So looking at this first equation, 1/4 A equals 16. There are no parentheses, so there is nothing here for me to distribute. There is only one variable, so there is nothing for me to combine, and I don't need to move the variable because there's no variables on the other side of the equation to move it to. When I look at the equation 1/4 A equals 16, there is nothing being added or subtracted, so that just leaves my last step, M. We're going to either multiply or divide to cancel out our coefficient. Since 1/4 is being multiplied, we're going to use division to cancel it out. And remember, if you want your equation to stay equal, if you do something on one side of the equation, you have to do it on the other side also. Otherwise, your equation gets unbalanced and it's not equal anymore. So 1/4 divided by itself cancels out and just leaves the letter A. 16 divided by 1/4 is something you can put into your calculator, and 16 divided by 1/4 gives me 64. So A equals 64. To check my work, I would rewrite my equation 1/4 times something equals 16, and I'm going to plug in 64. I can check that in my calculator. Does 1/4 times 64 give me 16? If so, then that means I have the correct value of A. Okay, number 2. Again, I need to go through the steps of don't call me after midnight. First of all, there's no parentheses, so we will not distribute. There is only one M, so we will not combine like terms, and we will not move any variables. I don't see anything being added or subtracted, so I can take that step off, but I might need to multiply or divide. So let's see, this says M divided by 3 equals -5. The opposite of division is multiplication. So to cancel out that 3, I'm going to multiply by 3. I'm going to multiply by 3 on one side and the other so that my equation stays balanced. So let's think about this. 3 times M divided by 3. The times 3 and the divide by 3 are going to cancel each other out because they are opposite or inverse operations. So that's going to leave M by itself. On the other side, I see I have -5 times +3. Negative times positive is negative. 5 times 3 is 15. Based on my solving, I see that M equals -15, but I need to check my work. So I'm going to rewrite my equation, leaving parentheses for my variable. Something divided by 3 should equal -5. And I plug in -15 for M. -15 divided by 3 does equal -5. So that's the correct answer. Number 3, we have an equation that's getting slightly more complicated, and they've already worked this one out for us. They checked for distribution. There were no parentheses. They checked for combining like terms. There were no numbers on the same side and no variables on the same side. We couldn't move variables because there was only one d, and we didn't want to have to move that around for no reason. But something is being added. I see here that I have 4d plus 8. If I want to make that plus 8 go away, I need to use its inverse operation and subtract 8. So I do that on both sides so that my equation stays balanced. And that ends up with 4d equals negative 24. So by subtracting the 8, we took care of step A. Then we need to look for a coefficient. Here I see I'm multiplying 4 times d. So 4 times d can be canceled out using division. 4 divided by 4 cancels out. And if I do it on one side, I do it on the other. So d is by itself on the left. Negative 24 divided by positive 4 is negative 6. And so I see that d is probably equal to negative 6, but I have to check my work and see if I made a mistake. So 4 times negative 6 plus 8 equals negative 16. I'm going to use a little space at the bottom here because my handwriting is kind of big. 4 times negative 6 is negative 24 plus 8 equals negative 16. And I can check that in my calculator. Does negative 24 plus 8 equal negative 16? Yes, it does. We solved it correctly. So let's look at question 4 and go through all of the steps. D, is there anything to distribute? No. C, do I have any numbers or variables on the same side of the equal sign? No, there is nothing to combine. M, do I have variables on both sides of the equation, and do I need to move a variable over to the other side? No, there's only a C on the left side, not both sides. A, is something being added or subtracted? At first glance, it looks like the 6 is not being added because it's there first. But I can change this in my head to negative 3c plus 6 equals negative 15. And no, I don't have to rewrite it like that every time, but it is helpful for me to see that the 6 is being added to a negative 3c. It's still a negative 3 and a positive 6. So if I want to cancel that 6 out, I need to use its inverse. So a positive 6 minus 6 will cancel. And if I do it on the left, I do it on the right. So those 6's cancel, and I'm left with negative 3c equals negative 21. The last step is M, multiply or divide. Right now, c is being multiplied by negative 3. To get c by itself, I need to use its inverse operation and divide by negative 3. So my negative 3's cancel and leave c by itself. Negative 21 divided by negative 3. Negative divided by negative is positive. 21 divided by 3 is 7. And I check my work. 6 minus 3 times something equals negative 15. And we're going to plug in our 7. So 6 minus 21 equals negative 15. And I check in my calculator. Is 6 minus 21 equal to negative 15? Yes, it is. We solved this one correctly. So I'd like you to try question 5. I'd like you to pause the video, give this one a shot, and then replay the video and see if your answer matches mine. So the first thing that I'm going to do, and this helps me keep myself organized, is I'm going to draw a line through my equal sign, and this is not strictly necessary, but it's going to help be my reminder that if I do something on one side of the line, I need to do it on the other side of the line too. Let's go through the steps of Don't Call Me After Midnight. There is no distribution in this problem. There are no like terms on the same side of the line. I don't need to move any variables because there's only one a, but there is something being added. I need to make that 16 go away, so I'm going to subtract 16 from both sides. 16 minus 16 is 0. Those canceled out. 10 minus 16 is negative 6. 3/4 times a equals negative 6. Step A is done. M. There is something being multiplied times my a. I'm multiplying times 3/4. So to undo that multiplication, I'm going to divide by 3/4. If I do it on the left, that means I have to do it on the right. 3/4 divided by itself cancels out. Negative 6 divided by 3/4 is negative 8. A equals negative 8. There's no space for me to check my work, but just to be safe, I'm going to do it anyways. 3/4 times a plus 16 equals 10. 3/4 times negative 8 is negative 6 plus 16 should equal 10. Okay, good. That's all it takes to check your work, guys. It's super fast. You should do it on every single problem. 6 has already started for us. That's really nice. There's nothing to distribute. There's nothing to combine. I don't need to move any variables, but look, they're already showing me I do need to add or subtract something. In order to get rid of that positive 7 and move it away from my variable, I need to subtract both sides by 7. So I subtract my 7, cancel that out. And what I'm left with is my m over 3 equals negative 12. Okay, so they did the subtraction for us. That was really nice. We need to do the last step. We need to make that 3 go away by using multiplication. The 3 is being divided, so we use its opposite or its inverse operation. And that cancels it out and leaves m by itself. M equals negative 12 times 3, which is negative 36. And again, guys, checking your work is so super fast, so we're going to do it real quick here in the corner. 7 plus something over 3 equals negative 5. 7 plus negative 36 divided by 3 is negative 12 equals negative 5. And you can check in your calculator. Is it true that 7 plus negative 12 equals negative 5? Yes, it is. That's all it takes to make sure you have the right answer. Okay, number 7. There is no distribution in this problem, but they're giving us a hint. See that check mark by the C? We need to combine some like terms. So I'm going to draw my line, and let's see. Where do I have like terms on the same side of the line? Negative 1b plus 5b is 4b plus 13 equals 37. I'm going to box up my variable. That's my mental cue that I need to get this by itself, and anything outside that box needs to go away. So there's no variables on the other side of the equation, so I don't need to move anything. I'm adding 13, so to make it go away, I need to subtract 13. 4b equals 37 minus 13, which is 24. And finally, I am multiplying times 4. So to cancel that out and get b by itself, we're going to divide by 4. B equals 6. Okay, you know how to check your work on a problem like this, so I'm not going to show you every single time. Let's look at question 8. Okay. Okay, and again, look at the letters to the side. Those notes are giving you a hint. Your first step should be distribution. When you see those parentheses, it means you need to distribute. Negative 0.3 times y plus 5. So negative 0.3 times y is negative 0.3y. Easy enough. Negative 0.3 times 5 is negative 1.5. You can do this by hand, or you can do this in your calculator. That is entirely up to you. So I'm going to draw my line down the middle, just as a reminder. I don't see any like terms to combine. I don't have variables on both sides. I do need to do some adding or subtracting. So here, I'm trying to get this by itself, which means that minus 1.5, it needs to go. So we're going to add 1.5 on both sides. Negative 0.3y equals negative 13 plus 1.5 is negative 11.5. So we added or subtracted. Step A is done. Final step, we're going to divide. We want to get y by itself, so we need to divide by negative 0.3. And if you're following along with your calculator, you're going to see something interesting here. You're going to see 38.3 repeating. That 3 is going to go all the way off the edge of the screen. I know that 0.3 repeating is actually a very simple fraction, and I think it's a little bit prettier to write that way. So I'm going to change this to 38, and instead of 0.3 repeating, I would rather see 38 and 1/3. All right, without looking at your notes, this is a challenge for you. I want you to fill in the steps that you follow to solve multi-step equations. So I'm going to have you pause the video here, you write them in, and then you can hit play and check your answers. All right, we went over these steps on every single problem we did today, so I really hope you remember them. If not, it's okay. You still have your little handout, so you have time to get this in your head so that you have it there for the test. So D is distribution. C is combine like terms. M is move your variables. Oops, sorry guys, I'm struggling with writing today. A is add or subtract. And M is either multiply or divide. All right, I will see you tomorrow for notes 1.3.